The Haunting of Blackwood Lake. The town of Blackwood was small and unremarkable, nestled between dense forests and hills. It had little to draw attention, no grand historical landmarks, no industry, but it had Blackwood Lake, a sprawling body of water so vast that on overcast days it blended into the horizon, becoming indistinguishable from the sky. Blackwood Lake was beautiful, but it was also feared. For as long as anyone could remember, stories had been told of the woman in white, a ghost who haunted the lake's waters. Everyone in town knew the legend. A century ago, a young woman named Eliza Reed had been found floating face down in the lake. The details surrounding her death were hazy, but some said she had drowned herself after being jilted by her lover. Others believed she had been murdered, her body dumped into the lake by a man who had promised to marry her. Regardless of the truth, it was said that her spirit never left, and on moonless nights she would rise from the water, calling for those who dared to cross her path. Lily Winters didn't believe in ghosts. She'd grown up hearing the stories, her grandmother warning her never to go near Blackwood Lake after dark. But as she got older, Lily dismissed the tales as folklore, just old wives' tales meant to scare children. She had moved away after high school, going to college in the city, and for years, she hadn't given Blackwood or its lake much thought. But after her parents passed away, Lily returned to the small town to settle their affairs. Their house, now hers, was nestled on the outskirts of Blackwood, with a view of the lake from the back porch. As soon as she stepped foot in the house, a wave of nostalgia washed over her. The air was thick with memories, Christmases by the fireplace, summers spent swimming in the lake despite the warnings. Her parents had never been as superstitious as her grandmother. First few nights back were uneventful. Lily spent her days sorting through her parents' belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate. She spent her evenings sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the lake. There was something calming about the stillness of the water, the way it reflected the colors of the sky. But as the days passed, Lily began to feel uneasy. It started with the dreams. Each night, she dreamed of water. Cold, dark water that seemed to pull her down, dragging her deeper and deeper until she couldn't breathe. In the dreams, she would thrash and kick, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break free. And always, just before she woke up gasping for air, she would see her. A woman in a white dress, standing waist-deep in the lake, her long black hair floating on the surface, her eyes locked onto Lily's. Lily tried to shake off the dreams, attributing them to stress and the grief of losing her parents. But the unease didn't fade. Every night, the dreams became more vivid, more intense. The woman's face, pale and expressionless, haunted her even in waking moments. And it wasn't just the dreams. Strange things began happening around the house. One evening, while Lily was sitting on the porch, she heard it. Faint sound of humming. At first, she thought it was the wind, but as she listened, the sound grew clearer. It was a woman's voice, soft and melodic, drifting across the water. She stood up, scanning the lake's surface. There was no one there. The next morning, Lily found wet footprints leading from the lake to the porch. They were small, like a woman's, and they disappeared just before the back door. She told herself it must have been a prank, kids messing around, but deep down, she felt the first stirrings of fear. Determined not to let the fear consume her, Lily tried to go about her business as usual, but the dreams continued, each one more disturbing than the last. And the woman, the ghost, seemed to be getting closer. One night, after waking from another nightmare, Lily made a decision. She needed to confront her fear, to prove to herself that the ghost of Blackwood Lake was nothing more than a story. She grabbed a flashlight and pulled on her coat, her heart pounding as she stepped outside. The air was crisp and cool, the sky a blanket of stars. The lake was still, reflecting the night like a mirror. Lily walked to the edge of the water, her footsteps crunching on the gravel path. She shone her flashlight across the surface, the beam cutting through the darkness. Nothing. She sighed, relieved, but also feeling a bit foolish for letting her imagination get the better of her. But as she turned to head back to the house, she heard it. the soft, rhythmic sound of water lapping against the shore. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, she turned back toward the lake. There in the distance was the figure. It was the woman from her dreams, standing waist-deep in the water, her white dress billowing around her like mist. Her long, dark hair hung wet and tangled over her shoulders, and her eyes, those haunting, hollow eyes, were fixed on Lily. Lily's pulse quickened, and her hands shook as she gripped the flashlight tighter. "Who are you?" she called, her voice trembling. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she began to move toward her, gliding across the water as if she were floating. Lily's legs felt like lead, her body frozen in place as the ghost drew nearer. The air grew colder, the wind picking up as the ghost approached, and the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves filled Lily's nostrils. Desperation surged through her. "What do you want?" she shouted, but again there was no response. The woman stopped just at the shore, her feet touching the wet rocks. Her face, once expressionless, now twisted into a look of sorrow and anger. And then she spoke. "Help me." The words were barely more than a whisper, but they echoed in the stillness of the night. Lily's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the ghost, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Help me," the woman repeated, her voice more insistent. "Find him." Lily's mind raced. Find who? What did she mean? But before she could ask, the ghost began to fade, her figure dissolving into the mist until she was gone, leaving only the still water in her wake. Lily stumbled back to the house, her mind reeling. Who was the ghost talking about? Was it her lover? The one who had betrayed her? Stories never mentioned him by name, only that he had left her, causing her to drown in despair. Determined to uncover the truth, Lily spent the next several days researching the history of Blackwood Lake. She visited the local library, combing through old records and newspapers. Most of the articles confirmed what she already knew. Eliza Reed had died under mysterious circumstances, her body found in the lake. But there were no concrete details about her lover, no name, no clues as to who he was or what had happened to him. Frustrated but not deterred, Lily continued her search. One day, she stumbled across an old diary, hidden among a collection of dusty books in the back of the library. The diary belonged to Eliza's sister, Margaret Reed. As Lily read through the entries, she felt a chill run down her spine. Margaret wrote about how Eliza had fallen in love with a man named James, a drifter who had come to Blackwood looking for work. The two had met in secret, their affair hidden from everyone, including Eliza's fiancé, a wealthy landowner named Henry Caldwell. But when Henry found out about the affair, he confronted Eliza in a fit of rage. According to Margaret, Henry had taken Eliza to the lake that night, threatening her with violence if she didn't end things with James. The final entry in the diary was the most chilling of all. Margaret wrote that she had seen Henry dragging Eliza toward the lake, heard her sister's screams echoing through the trees. But by the time she arrived, it was too late. Eliza was gone, her body swallowed by the water. Lily's hands trembled as she closed the diary. Henry Caldwell. He had killed Eliza, and her ghost had been haunting the lake ever since, waiting for someone to uncover the truth. But there was more to the story. The ghost had asked Lily to find him. Not Henry. James. Lily knew what she had to do. She returned to the lake that night, standing once again at the water's edge. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the surface. She could feel the cold air pressing against her skin, but she wasn't afraid. "Eliza," she called, her voice steady. "I know what happened to you. I know about Henry. But what about James? What do you want me to find?" The water rippled, and once again the ghost appeared, her figure rising from the depths. She looked at Lily with those sorrowful eyes, and for a moment Lily felt a pang of sympathy. Eliza had been wronged, betrayed by the man who was supposed to love her. "Find him," Eliza whispered again, but this time her voice was softer, almost pleading. "He's waiting." Lily didn't understand. Was James still alive? How could he be after all this time? But then it clicked. James wasn't alive. He was buried, his body hidden somewhere near the lake. Eliza's ghost wasn't asking for revenge, she was asking for closure. She wanted James to be found, to be laid to rest. Lily spent the next several days searching the area around the lake. It was painstaking work, but she was determined. She combed through the woods, looking for any sign of a grave. any clue that might lead her to James's body. And then, one day, she found it. Tucked away in a small clearing near the edge of the forest, she discovered a patch of earth that looked disturbed. The ground was uneven, as if something had been buried there long ago. Lily's heart raced as she began to dig, her hands trembling with anticipation. After what felt like hours, her shovel hit something solid. She knelt down, brushing away the dirt to reveal a wooden box, old and rotting, still intact. Inside, wrapped in decayed fabric, were the remains of a man. Lily knew it was James. She called the authorities, who confirmed her suspicions. James had been murdered, likely by Henry Caldwell, and his body had been hidden near the lake all those years ago. That night, as Lily stood by the lake, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The water was calm, the air still, and for the first time since she'd returned to Blackwood, there were no whispers, no strange occurrences. The ghost of Eliza Reed was gone. She had found the peace she had been searching for.